Have you ever had a grief explosion? If you have experienced the loss of a child, then I know for a fact you've experienced a grief explosion. Let me explain. A grief explosion, according to my terms, is when the grief just gets so overwhelming that you find yourself just falling totally apart. It's like the lid on top of your head has just exploded. You can't take another second of this heavy, heavy amount of grief. And there's an explosion. You start screaming, yelling, sometimes cursing, crying, thrashing, running, pounding, saying things that you never would normally say. You just simply explode. It's when the grief gets to be too much. I know I've experienced several of those grief explosions. They're not fun. You feel just miserable afterward. You've probably cried and screamed so much that you don't have much of a voice left, if any. Your nose is all stuffed up, your head is pounding, your body is tired, and you just feel overall nasty. What causes these grief explosions, and are they harmful? Well, I believe these explosions are caused from suppressing our grief. It's a pileup of grief day after day, week after week, month after month. We're trying so hard to navigate back into life following the loss of our child that we just simply push aside or push under the grief that we've been, that's there. And we're trying to just move ahead, trying to do our best until one day it just feels like too much and everything just breaks apart. Is it dangerous? Is it a bad thing? Absolutely not. In fact, I think these grief explosions are necessary. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the more we suppress our grief, the more we allow grief to pile up, the harder it is on us. If we could only learn somehow to chunk down our grief every day, that we would be able to work through it a little better. It's when we try so hard to avoid the painful feelings of grief that it piles up and piles up and piles up until boom, we have that big explosion, and then we're just deflated, defeated, and we just feel a mess all over. Just feeling terrible. So, what is the remedy for this? I'm not sure there is a remedy. We're trying hard to live life following such a tragic loss, and there is no real remedy. We try and try and try. We do our best, and when a grief explosion happens, at best, just experience it. I know that when I've gone through these explosions, I feel miserable at the time, but then the next day I kind of can pick up the pieces and move on a little bit better. I feel better that I let it all out, kind of like cleaning out a closet or sweeping the dirt out from under the rug. You take the rug up and you just clean everything real nicely, and everything is starting fresh again. So, if you have experienced grief explosions, or if you are about to experience one, don't be afraid. Let it happen. Release the grief. You have to release it and start over again. Tomorrow's a new day. You'll feel refreshed. You'll feel somewhat emptied of such a heavy, heavy burden and start fresh again. Okay? I hope this has helped you. I know so many things happen to us on this grief journey that sometimes we feel like we're just out of sync totally, that we're, going half out of our minds, and it frightens us. This is all a normal part of our grief walk. It's when we suppress grief too much that it finally has to be released. And that's the big grief explosion. So release your grief. Hopefully it'll only be a minimal explosion. I know I've had some pretty rough ones, and then I've had ones that aren't so bad. But I honestly believe they are part of this grief journey. They're not harmful to us. In fact, they're helpful to release some of the grief. And that's my moment with Clara, with you today. And I look forward to spending more moments with you in the coming days and weeks ahead. For today, here's your nugget of hope. Just don't be afraid of these explosions.